Today is Wednesday, July 7th, and this is Headers and Footers, the UEFA Euro 2020 show from the Toronto Star. I'm your host, Brendan Dunlop. And then there were two. The final set at Euro 2020. Just the two you expected, right? Italy v. England. Oh, the English. They just don't make it easy on themselves, do they? I mean, if they did make it easy, and it was without a bit of controversy, would it even really be England? No. Three Lions sparing their fans the emotional turmoil of penalties, which in itself is a victory, right? All three of England's previous semifinal appearances before Wednesday against Denmark, all three, and the most recent one being 3 years ago in Russia in the semifinal, you'll remember, all three had gone to extra time, and two of those had gone to penalties. Harry Kane, the hero, scoring a rebound off a penalty kick to put England through the Sunday's final. You knew it was going to be special if they did it, and you knew Gareth Southgate was dreaming about it the first day he took the England job, and now he's taken England to a major final for the first time since England won the World Cup at Wembley in 1966, just in case you hadn't heard that stat before. It is the longest gap between final appearances for any European nation, which might surprise you. And Damsgaard's incredible free kick goal, which was the only direct free kick goal that we've seen at the Euros, was the first goal that England have allowed in 691 minutes. So the final is set. They've been singing It's Coming Home for 3 weeks. It may not come home, but they will have a final at home, and it has been a home tournament for England. So Grant Wahl, thank you very much for coming on Headers and Footers to break down how England got there, surviving Denmark and not needing penalties to do so.
Yeah, really phenomenal game, I thought. I know there's going to be people who are angry about the penalty, and I understand why. I thought it was a soft penalty. At the same time, I think England deserves a lot of credit. Both teams do. I mean, England comes from behind in this game after a terrific free kick goal by Damsgaard gives Denmark the lead. Quick response from England. And then Denmark got tired. You could see it. It was, the last 20 minutes of the 90, they weren't moving very well. And I actually was getting frustrated with Southgate for not doing more to take advantage of that for England. He wasn't subbing much. And then once it went to extra time, you just knew that Denmark was going to try and play for penalties. They had no legs left. I feel a little badly about them having to fly 6 hours after the quarterfinal from Azerbaijan to London to play this game. But I guess that's part of a tournament that takes place over a pretty big expanse. And then, England was the only team trying to score in extra time. And yes, Raheem Sterling sold it. No, I would not have called it a penalty, but there was contact, and it's not that surprising to me that they gave it. Kane gets stuffed by Schmeichel on his first attempt, and then follows up on the rebound, and that's the goal, and that's the game. Overall, very memorable game, and yet we'll probably not remember it nearly as much as what's to come on Sunday.
Yeah, you're definitely right there, I think. Looking at the penalty, I mean, England had a pretty legit shout for a penalty, I thought. Maybe equally as much as it surprised me that when the actual penalty shout on the Sterling foul went to VAR, that VAR didn't overturn that. I can understand in real time how a referee would see that. And also, I think, this is the first time in 18 months, truly, that you're feeling, or one of the few times, that you're actually feeling the effects of the crowd on a match. And it's no secret, and we saw it very early when football returned, early in the pandemic, particularly in the Bundesliga, in those empty stadiums, how much the gameplay increased, how many fewer whistles there were, and how much quicker it was. And this tournament, the longer it's gone especially, really has labored. It feels as though, the into touch time is actually down quite a bit. There's much more whistles, much more time, it seems. And I really thought that was going to be overturned by VAR. So to see Kane step up and Schmeichel get the justice for the save, but not be able to stop the rebound, I thought Denmark had played an incredible game up to that point. But in the end, Harry Kane has really grown into being this hero that we all thought he would be a few tournaments ago.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Kane and when you look at Raheem Sterling, they've both had very, very good tournaments. And, it ended up being an own goal, the first goal today by by England. But, Sterling was a huge part of that, obviously. Didn't get credit for it in the end. But he's a dangerous player in this tournament, much more than he was toward the end of the Premier League season. And Kane has really heated up when it's mattered in this tournament. And, he got off to a slow start, yet here he is now on 4 goals. And I think 5 leads the tournament. So he could still win the Golden Boot here. I still kind of wish, part of me was wanting at least one Denmark guy to get into the box in the second part of extra time and just sort of fall over and see if he might get a makeup call.
Yeah.
Because I thought any type of even marginal situation like that probably would have gotten the call. I totally hear you on your surprise at VAR not overturning it. I'm surprised that Michele, the referee, didn't go and look at it. Which he didn't. I'm often surprised when the referee doesn't go and take a look himself. But I think overall, actually, VAR has been pretty good in this tournament. So I look at least compared to what we usually see in the Premier League, which is usually pretty poor compared to the rest of the continent. But I'm a little bummed for Denmark right now because they played a terrific tournament. They played a good game today, gave it everything they had, took a lead in a very hostile environment, and almost pulled off getting the penalties, and they didn't quite get there.
If you are a relatively new soccer fan or a new viewer or listener to this show and your introduction to VAR is this tournament, it's not like this all the time. It's certainly not like this in Major League Soccer, and it is definitely not like this Saturday morning. Just check Grant or any soccer person's timeline on the Saturday morning in the Premier League, and you'll see that. You mentioned Southgate and the substitutions. I definitely want to ask you about that. You know that I am biased towards Aston Villa, and I tend to see things through a claret and blue lens. But I think the world saw what I've been seeing for several years, that Jack Grealish is an incredible talent, and he can change games. And yet he comes into this match and is removed at extra time. And I understand the formation change. They were up a goal at this point, and Southgate was more comfortable going to the 3-5-2 again and using the wing backs. Trippier probably should have been in the match earlier, to be honest. But I feel like, and tell me if you think this, that Southgate is afraid to play Foden and Grealish together.
Yeah, I think there's something to that from watching the games, from seeing sort of the very pragmatic way that England has kind of played throughout the tournament, but especially in the opening games, I thought. I think that's something that may just be in Southgate's head. Like, I don't want those two guys out there at the same time. I want to use Grealish in very specific circumstances. I don't want to leave myself exposed. And I think he feels that if Grealish is on there for too long, that there's an element of exposure defensively. Foden, it's interesting, based on how he played the second half of the club season, I would have expected him to play more in this tournament. And he did early on, wasn't great, but there's an element here for me of, I felt like Didier Deschamps won the World Cup in 2018, playing fairly conservatively with the players that France had, and he was rewarded for it. Not so much of this tournament, but I think Southgate is doing a little bit of the same in this tournament as Deschamps did in 2018, and he's being rewarded for it. England's had a lot going its way. When you look at 6 out of 7 games at home, when you look at just the very little amount of travel overall,
900 miles,
especially compared to a team like Denmark, at least in the elimination rounds. And so I was almost going to make a joke on Twitter about, does this count as England hosting the tournament? This whole thing, because that's essentially what they've done, at least for the English team. And yet I still look at how England has played throughout the tournament, what they've achieved. I think they deserve to be in the final. So I don't want to tip things too far in the direction to make it seem like I feel like England doesn't deserve to be here. I predicted they would get to the final before the tournament started, felt like, said they would win the tournament. They're in a decent spot to do so, but it's going to be a good game against Italy. I'm excited about the matchups there.
Before I ask you about the final, just a quick thought on Denmark. You are a brilliant storyteller. This was an incredible story that the Danes, pulled off into getting to the semifinals with what happened to Christian Eriksen, clinching its semifinal berth exactly, 3 weeks after his collapse on the pitch. Where do you think this story ranks in football folklore?
I mean, it's a tremendous chapter, and I'm just so thankful, as are everyone, as is everyone who loves this sport, that Christian Eriksen's going to be okay. We didn't lose him. We came awfully close to losing him. And that in of itself, just to talk about it, to think about it, it's crazy. You're keeping that in mind, watching this Denmark team, how they've dealt with it the day it happened, how they've dealt with it in the game since. And I can't imagine what those players, coach, the staff, everyone involved with that Denmark team, what they've gone through. I'm glad they don't have to come back and play a third place game like they would in the Copa America. But my guess is they're going to be pretty emotional and just spent at the end of this tournament now. But they'll look back on it, as will so many of us, and be just, I think, really admiring of how things have gone. And it sounds like Christian Eriksen's going to be at the final, as will his doctors who saved his life. And fingers crossed that he's able to live a normal life. And it sounds like he might have a chance to play again.
Denmark clocked a lot of travel miles, as you mentioned. They certainly put a lot of miles out on the pitch in these games, but definitely the fatigue and the weight of how heavy this tournament was much harder on Denmark than any other nation. As a quick final thought, then we've got Italy going up against England. Italy, a side that can still play that door bolt defensive style that we've seen, but tend to not want to do that and play this free flowing, often beautiful attacking style. How will they fare at Wembley, and what will be a home final for England?
I think we might have gotten a little bit of an indication yesterday about how Italy plays without Spinazzola. And I don't want to say that he's sort of the single only reason why Italy plays the way they play, but, has a lot to do with the opponent you're playing against. And so Spain, a bit more of a possession team, extreme possession team than England. But that was a little more like Italy, at least what sort of stereotypical historical Italy is, the semifinal, the way we saw them play that game. And so maybe we'll get something in between. I mean, I don't think we're going to get the marauding Spinazzola type figure that we got earlier in the tournament, which is unfortunate. But I still think this Italy team is not just going to totally sit back. And I think that should make for a good final. And England won't need any motivation in this game. And it's a hard game for me to call. I mean, I'm going to lean toward England, I guess, just because if you're looking for small margins, playing at home, building momentum throughout the tournament, Italy having lost one of its best players for the tournament, and Immobile has not played very well the last couple of games. He's been pretty invisible. So, and yet at the same time, I could see this thing going to penalties, just like we've been seeing in a few games lately. But I guess I would lean toward England.
I hope we get a good final, and I'm leaning towards Italy, but that may change as the days get closer. I always know that I'm up for some good soccer talk when you and I get together, Grant. So thank you very much for coming on Headers and Footers this month.
Always my pleasure.
Grant likes England, and if they're going to do it, you got to think Harry Kane will be the reason why. He scored 15 goals against Kasper Schmeichel for both club and country, more than any other keeper. Would have been a smart bet that he would have found one on Wednesday. I did feel bad for Schmeichel, to be honest. Good save, was never going to get to the rebound. Just the way it broke for Harry Kane, he was always going to finish that. The match winner, also Harry Kane's 10th England goal at a major tournament, which draws him level with Gary Lineker. Harry Kane doesn't wear number 10, but man, he plays like a number 10. He'd come back. He was playing provider. He was off on the right side. He had a couple of great balls in. When Grealish and Foden were out there, not for very long, I wondered what Kane would do if he would fall back into the 10 spot. Just didn't see it long enough. He got the goal, and Southgate could go back and tinker. Can we call Gareth Southgate the tinker man? Feels weird, doesn't it? England winning at Wembley, though, should feel pretty normal. It's starting to. Wednesday's win, they're 15th in their last 17 at the National Stadium. Their only loss had come against Denmark in the Nations League in October. But that's forgotten about now, isn't it? Ahead of the final, Italian backers will be looking at these numbers. England have scored 46 goals and conceded just 5 in those 17 games at Wembley. The Italians have some numbers they'll fancy too, though. Here's a tale of the tape ahead of the big final. Italy have never lost to England at a major tournament. Overall, they face each other 27 times, the Azzurri winning 11 to England's 8, and 8 draws. At Euro 2020, though, England have scored 10 goals. Italy have bagged 12. Denmark's own goal Wednesday, the only one England have allowed. Defensive Italy have conceded 3. What does that say? England lost to Italy with a Pirlo Panenka in the penalty shootout at Euro 2012. You've probably seen the highlight replayed. The English hate to see it. Certainly Joe Hart hates to see it. They lost to Italy in the group stage at Euro 1980 as well. I feel like Euro 80 is not one that's talked about, not a tournament that gets a lot of play. The early gambling lines, and there will be a lot of play on this final, the early gambling lines have England as the slight favorites. Minus 125 for England to lift the trophy? Not bad if you like the home team. Even money if you like Italy. I hope that you've liked watching and listening to Headers and Footers as much as I have liked and enjoyed bringing it to you over what has been an incredible, incredible tournament. I'll do a preview show with Laura Armstrong on Friday. I honestly can't believe we're nearly there. But I'm glad you've been here. Thanks for kicking it with me.